Good morning, leaders. It's Tuesday morning, and we're going to today have a brief lecture on Chapter 9 of our textbook, which is Understanding and Renewing Complex Organizations. Here we're going to kind of scale up from talking about groups and teams to now talking about organizations, which your textbook describes as collections of groups, right? And I think that's a really fair way to frame thinking about what an organization is. Um, just a couple notes before I get started on this material for today. This will be our last lecture for the semester because this is the last chapter of the textbook I cover in this course. We stop at about page 366 in the book. As I mentioned in the Sky announcement, um, I'm working on a Leadership Studies 2 course that will be coming out in, I would imagine, 2 years because I have another course prep before that. Two course preps before that, actually. But that course will pick up this book for the last three chapters, chapters 10, 11, and 12, and probably the residue of chapter 9. Our course, Intro Leadership Studies, will be a prereq for Leadership Studies 2, so students will already have the textbook, so that will be beneficial and save students money. So if you think you might be interested in Leadership Studies 2, and when that debuts about 2 years from now, hold on to your textbook, don't sell it back, and you'll already have one of the books for the course anyway. Okay. So we'll have a discussion forum this weekend again about the film Darkest Hour, about Winston Churchill during the Battle of Britain. And then coming forward, as I mentioned, we'll have a few more films that the library is ordering for me that we'll watch through Swank Video. So you can watch it right through your laptop or device, or if you have a smart TV, possibly you can do the screen mirroring function and maybe bring it up on a laptop or device and then actually watch it on your TV screen and get the movie effect, get your popcorn and, have a good time with it. Get your family together and have them learn about leadership too, right? So we'll be watching that film. We'll be watching a film about George Washington that was done by A&E Network back when A&E Network still produced good programming and movies, called The Crossing, which is about Washington crossing the Delaware and the Battle of Trenton. Stars Jeff Daniels, so it's got a good A-list actor in it. It's quite a good program, and it shows you a lot about his decision making and how, like, what the hub and wheel system actually looked like. And then we'll look at, I decided we're going to watch a film called Ike, Countdown to D-Day, which stars one of my favorite actors, Tom Selleck. Some of you may know him if you watch Blue Bloods. I was not a Magnum PI fan when he came out on that TV show, but I like some of his old Western stuff, and certainly Blue Bloods I'm a big fan of, and I love this Ike film. I think it's terrific. So he plays Eisenhower, and it shows you the high leadership circles of the Allies and how they planned for D-Day and how he managed personalities. So it's very closely related to the kinds of things that we covered in the last week in Chapter 8 about interacting in teams and groups, and also the kinds of things you read about in the Washington book about working with troublemakers and unusual people and things like that. So dealing with subordinates and superiors as well. So all those sorts of things we see play out in this movie. And then I'm going to have a surprise movie, something fun at the end of the semester that's a little out of left field. It'll take you by surprise. It's kind of like clicking on a YouTube link and not knowing what you're going to get. So anyway, so let's talk about interacting in teams, groups. And again, the rest of your semester really is going to be about your projects. So I'm planning on, besides you have exam 3, if you choose to take it, you've got your ECL projects. Email me, please. Are you going to do a project or do a paper? Email me and tell me. Also, are you taking exam number 3? Email me, tell me. Okay, I need to know this stuff. All right, I'm going to be setting up some WebEx meetings to meet with your groups. And I'll invite you to these WebEx meetings because I have all your emails, and set up these times for us to chat about your projects and figure out where you guys are, so we can get these done by the end of the semester. Okay. Okay, so let's get started. So most of the rest of the semester after this lecture here, our discussion forums moving forward are all going to be based around films I'm going to ask you to watch. I'll rewatch all of them and then come up with a set of questions and post that. So everything's going to be your projects and discussions about the films for the rest of the semester. Okay, except the third exam. Okay, so this is our last material for that exam. Again, we're not going through the whole chapter 9 here. So let's start thinking about groups and organizations here. Um, if we look at the relational leadership model within the context of an organization, we're going to see it operating at a higher and more widespread level than we would see it playing out in a team or a group. For example, um, we will see the relational leadership model, hopefully, played out at a much larger scale at Rutgers University Camden than we would in the Student Government Association. We would see it play out at a higher level in the Student Government Association than we would in the History Club, right? So it's just all scaling up. So why? Because the Student Government Association has more areas of responsibility on the campus than does the History Club, right? Which is a sort of a finite group. And then if we looked at Rutgers University Camden from an administrative perspective, right, from the 10,000 foot view, there are a number of different schools within the university, right? There's the College of Arts and Sciences, there's the School of Business, there's the School of Nursing. Okay, um, there are there's the graduate school, there's the law school. Okay, so we have 5 different schools within the university, right? And then a bunch of different departments in the College of Arts and Sciences. So we have multiple groups in the organization, right? So it's easy. We just look at our school and say, Rutgers University is a collection of groups. The organization is a collection of groups. If we think about the separate schools and then the departments, et cetera, as smaller groups, right? Anyway, in that kind of a context, in that kind of a large context where you have to work across a system, right, to create a program, to create a major or a minor, um, to get yourself elected to student government. I mean, we can to, as we've talked about in school, to do a petition drive to find better parking conditions for students. You have to work across a broad system to get something accomplished. And that is where we can really see the efficacy or the effectiveness of the relational leadership model, right? How that works. It's best viewed and most valuable when we scale it up and we try to employ it in large organizations. Okay, we can really then see the emphasis on inclusivity and empowerment and ethics, right? And what is your process? Then that's when this stuff really matters, and it can really stand out because that's the way to get things done. Is to apply it across a big organization at a large scale. Okay, so as I mentioned, a good way to think about um, an organization as a collection of groups, as we just described. It scales up, and different groups can be bunched together or spread out. Right. So for the schools, we have the nursing school at one end of campus, the business school at another. Right now, although the business school will be moving um, to right across the street from City Hall. Actually, the corner of what is that? Market and Fifth. So at the corner of Fifth and Market is actually where the new business school will be located. That used to be a clinic there that Rutgers purchased, and they're going to, I think, knock that building down and build a new business school at that corner. So the business school is actually going to be much closer to the nursing school. But the College of Arts and Sciences is headquartered in Armitage Hall, which is all the way down the other end of Fifth Street. So their proximities differ, right? But they're all still part of the same organization. And we're actually going to have all the colleges right in a row there. Actually, we'll have The graduate school office is coming right next to the history department. So in one long line down Fifth Street, we'll have the centers of all the colleges, from nursing all the way down to arts and sciences by the bridge, which will be sort of interesting. Be a nice, neat line there. Um, so all of the participants, I mean, and I'm kind of following along with sort of what your textbook is saying here on page 357. All of the participants will be in fairly close proximity to one another, right? When those moves are completed, right? But then I guess we would ask ourselves, to get things done, how would you work Fifth Street, right? What would be your process for getting things done across the system or across the organization? Would you know how to go into those places and talk to people to try to get things done, right? Would you have the approach, right? Um, because in a large organization, and again, if we looked at New Brunswick, that's an even much larger organization, right? I mean, they have about 5 times more people at that location than we do in Camden. They're about 40,000. We're about 8,000. But let's just take our 8,000. Um, how do you work across that 8,000, right? I mean, the interactions in our university are continuous. There's constant activity going on, right? Um, and we can isolate from that, or we can try to engage in it. We can, instead of having each unit, and we have terminologies for this, like everybody operating in their own silo, right, and not talking to each other, right? Arts and sciences doesn't know what business is doing, and business doesn't talk to arts and sciences, and nursing doesn't talk, and the faculty don't talk to each other, and the students don't interact much. I mean, look at the law school, right? I mean, how much do the law school students interact with the rest of the campus? Eh, They don't. I mean, historically, I mean, I was a student there in the 1990s. The law school students are off on a little planet of their own. They might come into Starbucks. That's it. They have their own library. They have their little own lunch area over there by the law school and the admissions office where they eat, and they don't really interact with the rest of the campus, right? How would you begin to sort of bridge a connection to people in the School of Law, right? I mean, you need to do that via the relational leadership model. So you'll see its value best displayed when you're trying to work across a larger group, because organizations are complex. They're complex in their structures. Everything is set up a little bit differently, right? So let's talk about organizations as complex systems. Organizational leadership is, we can get a look at that. Um, but why do organizations exist? I mean, that's probably a better question to start with here. Why do they exist in the first place? Why does an organization exist? And the answer is for the same reason a group exists or your team exists, is for a purpose, right? I mean, we're just, again, scaling up. Every organization has a purpose. They exist to accomplish a specific purpose, right? So we have to start with that premise. And a system is part of an organization. So every organization has complex systems in it: budgeting systems, uh, policies, um, uh, the way that information is communicated, and who you ask for certain things, and who is able to communicate things, and other people are not allowed to communicate them, right? So there are all sorts of processes and systems in place. Look at our IT systems, very complicated, right? So there are all these sorts of systems in place that need to be navigated within a complex organization. Um, and a system, according to your textbook, is defined as an environment in which each interaction between members produces outcomes that affect each individual and subsequent interactions and outcomes. Okay, so every every interaction between members in a complex organization, um, at a work level, right, is going to impact others. It's not just going to impact the two people involved. It's going to impact others. It has an effect. Okay, that can reverberate upward. It can reverberate sideways, like a ripple effect in a pond, and it can reverberate down. Okay, so actions have consequences, and if they're good interactions, they can have good benefits and good reverberations. However, if they're negative interactions, they can have negative reverberation. So it's a question of going back to leadership in the first place, going back to week one, are we impacting people for good, right? It becomes an important question. So let's talk about organizational leadership. Why does leadership exist in an organization? It exists to help those groups work together, right? When we have a collection of groups that a large organization is, right? What's the purpose of the leadership of the organization? It's to help the various groups within the organization work together toward a specific purpose, right? So at Rutgers University Camden, the purpose is to, prepare, leaders for the 21st century. If you read the mission statement, right? Rutgers Camden has a mission statement. It's part of the strategic plan. You can look it up. It's a PDF on our campus website. So we have a mission to educate students and do good in the Delaware Valley and things like that, right? So the purpose of campus leadership is to get all the different various groups on campus working together toward that same end, okay? And that's a bigger job than president of the history club. Doesn't pay anything, does it? Student council president. Okay, some responsibility there for the students, but it's not like being the chancellor and having a responsibility for the entire campus, right? It's a much more complex system. So getting all the horses pulling in the same direction is the job of organizational leadership. The leadership exists for only one reason: to help an organization accomplish its purpose. That's the sole reason for the leadership, to help the organization accomplish its purpose, whatever that stated purpose is. Okay. Now, organizations are going to differ in their structures, right? Remember we talked about in groups, we talked about form follows function. We talked about the idea that what a group looks like structurally, how it's organized, any particular group or team, is predicated upon what the purpose of the group or team is, right? It's set up to do what it needs to do, right? So form follows function. Okay? It's similar here with an organization. To help an organization accomplish its purpose, the purpose could shift over time, but leadership always has to honor its inherent commitment to keep the organization on track to pursue its mission. Okay, so at times, in order to keep an organization on track toward achieving its purpose, changes may need to be made in the structure of the organization, okay, in order to better position it to accomplish the purpose. Sometimes we can find structural inefficiencies. In other words, things aren't set up well. Lines of communication aren't logical. If we look at what's called an org chart, right, an organizational chart, you can find that on the campus website if you want to see what the Rutgers organizational chart looks like, who reports to who, right? Who reports to whom, I'm sorry. You can find that sometimes you're asking, well, why is this group reporting to that person? They do that like it's not well organized, it's not well structured. The organization is not well structured, and sometimes these structures can be illogical. Quite frequently, when a new organizational leader comes in, there will be changes because they start moving people around, or moving people out and moving people in, right? They find structural inefficiencies or just poor organization with respect to how offices and groups report to each other. So these are parts of the system, and they can have a really big impact on how groups, teams, units below the organizational leadership level operate, right? So structure is an important part of any organization. If you look at the figure on page 363, and this is figure 9.1, figure 9.1 is explained on page 363. And this is what they call the traditional organizational structure. It's set up like a pyramid, excuse me. And This traditional organizational structure is set up as a pyramid again with the president at the top, and then either the officers or committee chairs, people of that ilk, in your middle sort of level. And then at the low level, you have your participants or members, right? So that's very sort of top down um, structure. That's called a traditional organizational structure. If you turn the page over to page 364, you'll see what's called the inverted organizational structure. And the inverted organizational structure, that's in figure 9.2 in your textbook, provides a look at sort of flipping the classroom, if you will, with regard to that. And you have your participants and members at the top of the organization, officers and committee chairs and people like that in the middle, and then the president at the bottom, right? So what does that look like? Well, it looks upside down. Yes, thank you for that. But what's it saying about sort of empowerment? And what's it saying about what the role of the quote unquote leader is? Well, first of all, it's saying everyone's a leader, right? It's saying your participants and members are leading. And it really tells you that the president at the bottom of the chart is really there to support the efforts of the others. They're not there to call the shots. They're not there to tell people what to do, but rather they're there to assist people in their work and support them. Right, so that's called the inverted organizational structure. That's something that's come more into vogue in the 21st century, and is an interesting way of thinking about things, and which may be appropriate in some circumstances and not in others. Right. On certain teams, we might see a coach, really, if you think about it, as sort of being in that sort of a role rather than necessarily calling all the shots. But the important thing and the web structure on page 365, we're not going to talk about that. It looks like my little brother stole my spirograph and wrote all over my textbook. So on page 363, 364, 365, we see these various sorts of organizational structures charted there for us in those figures. But here's the important thing to remember from whether it's a traditional, an inverted, or a web structure, right? The structure is not the organization. I repeat, the structure is not the organization. The structure is a feature of the organization, but it is not the organization. A structure can always be changed, okay? And again, it can adapt to circumstances. The organization is what? The membership, the people, okay? Rutgers Camden is the people. Rutgers Camden is the students. Rutgers Camden is the faculty. Rutgers Camden is the alumni, right? Rutgers Camden are the permanent staff, okay? Leaders come and go, okay? Chancellors, provosts, deans, okay, the people who we consider as the leaders, these people come and go. They've got about a 5 to 6 year shelf life and they go, okay? The university are the students, the alumni, the faculty, okay? That's the membership. That's the organization. Others are brought in to lead, but the organization, the membership is something different, and that's the best picture I can paint for you, right? The structure is not the organization. Okay, and then lastly, I just want to address this this one piece here at the bottom of page 366, and that's just about missions, right? An organization having a mission, right? And again, this is nothing new. This goes back to chapter 1. Why does the group exist? For a purpose, right? Same thing for an organization. The mission of the organization is why it exists. So when we get to an organizational level, what we call purpose for a group, we call mission for an organization, right? And that's the reason that every organization should have a mission statement, right? So just like the purpose is the reason for the existence of the group, The mission is the reason for the existence of the organization. And blessedly for you, that's all I've got today on chapter 9. That's as far as we go in the textbook. So just make sure that you understand chapters 7 and 8, especially the points that I covered in those lectures. Chapter 7 I posted in resources. Chapter 8 is a YouTube video also. And then chapter 9 up to page 366. Okay, guys. So I'll be seeing you on WebEx meetings soon, starting next week. Again, for the rest of this week, just make sure you've read this chapter up to page 366. Make sure you watch the film Darkest Hour this week, and I'll see you soon. Okay? Have a good day. Bye.